This would be a lot of fun to talk about. Me and Aaron are going to watch clips while we go over this, kind of dissecting, but the place we have to start is like what it means to us. And Aaron, I want to hear what makes something cinematic. How do you define cinematic?
Welcome to Backseat Directing,
where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew
and Aaron.
And we post new episodes every Monday and Thursday.
And on this episode, we're going over what makes a movie cinematic.
Let's find out. 3, 2, 1, action.
Got a little congested on that Monday and Thursdays, huh?
Leave me alone.
All right, today's topic is what makes movies cinematic. And I think this could possibly go into a little series that we make where we go into different aspects of filmmaking and our opinions on how things, what makes things better than others. You know, like
we've had some like good engagement, and even some people in our comments to certain things saying like, thank you for explaining this, like please continue to do this. Like we've had some good engagement from stuff where we kind of dissect like what's the reason for a close-up shot, what makes good sound design. Like we've touched on it, but like I think this series would be really interesting. Like it's a great idea on your part, and if anybody wants to comment and let us know anything you're curious about, like maybe why does this shot insinuate sadness? Like explain what makes a shot emotional, or what makes a character authoritative. Anything specific or broad, we'd definitely like to take suggestions.
Yeah, like one thing that came to mind when I was thinking of this topic is like when we were talking about the anamorphic lenses versus spheric lenses, you know, like
got a lot of good response to that.
Yeah, going between the difference, because it's something that's not like common knowledge, you know, like pretty much if you're a film nerd or in the industry, like working in the industry, like maybe that's something that you just aren't aware of, you know, like a camera's a camera, but there's definitely a lot more that goes into it, and there's a lot that makes a movie cinematic. And before we go on, I want to say like, what we're talking about today is not like what's taught in film school. It's our opinions of what makes a shot or a scene or movie look really encapsulating, really beautiful, like what brings it to the next level. And this is, again, like our opinions.
It probably should be taught in film school.
Yeah.
If their curriculum could include,
well, I mean,
our opinions, it probably would improve the quality.
Right. Yes, exactly. And I mean, the whole goal of this podcast, right, is to open our own film school.
Oh yeah.
We definitely want to teach everyone the correct ways of how to do things.
Yeah. It'd be nice if like Jordan Peele would give us a call, or like, Chris Nolan, like we just have so much to teach.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that they just don't know yet. Like you just don't know what you don't know, you know? And it's unfortunate, and hopefully we can spread the word.
I was trying to hold out for so long, and then when you said they just don't know yet, like those poor bastards. Those poor, successful, brilliant bastards.
Yeah, man. Imagine what they could do with us. Just imagine. They'd be on top of the world, all right?
This would be a lot of fun to talk about. Me and Aaron are going to watch clips while we go over this, kind of dissecting, but the place we have to start is like what it means to us. And Aaron, I want to hear what makes something cinematic. How do you define cinematic?
Yeah, so I kind of wrote up something because I really wanted to get all my thoughts together, and I didn't want to miss anything, you know, because like sometimes when we're having a conversation, like you go from point to point and maybe you skip over something that you wanted to mention and you just didn't bring it up. So I kind of wrote everything down. So this is what I got. Cinematic is defined as the visual qualities or aesthetics of a film or video. So by definition, every shot, scene, movie is cinematic. But when I hear the word cinematic, I think of an elevated emotion that was sparked by the presentation of a shot. When someone says that a movie, show, or video game is cinematic, to me, that means the visuals are above standard. The story was elevated by the way it was displayed. We review a lot of movies and shows on this podcast, and there are a few that have stood out to both of us where we've said, this movie is beautifully shot, or this movie is very cinematic. But since cinematic is defined as just visual qualities, I want to go over what we mean when we say the word cinematic as a compliment to a shot, scene, or movie. For myself, I broke it down into a 5-point checklist going in order from what I think is the most important. So, Andrew, you ready to hear my cinematic checklist?
Hit me, boss.
All right. First on my list, and arguably the most important, definitely most important to me, is lighting. Second, I have color grade. Then composition and set design. And then this fourth one's a little abstract. It's sound design. And I know that's not directly visuals, but I'm talking about like the foliage that goes into like when you're picking something up, you know, like, or when someone's throwing a punch and you hear the contact, like, or boots are walking in the snow, like it makes it feel like you're in the scene. That's kind of what I'm talking about with sound design. And that's why I have it at the bottom of the list, because it's not directly visuals, but it definitely enhances the visuals.
To be clear, when Aaron says foliage, he means like the Foley nature, like Foley sound design. Because when you first said it, I was like, foliage? Trees?
Yeah, sorry. And then my last point is kind of a point that kind of encapsulates everything, and that is how the visuals and or camera movement adds to the story. I think that's definitely most important. The story is the most important thing that's going on in a movie or a show or whatever.
I think the word cinema kind of like, I'm gonna touch on this too in my explanation, but I think it kind of branches off from the word kinematic, which like kinematic is movement. So I think what you touched on with movement is kind of an important element. I mean, it's the difference between a movie and a picture, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. So I've kind of broken down each point and kind of have a little more detail. So lighting, in my opinion, is the most powerful tool to make a cinematic shot. You can display emotion from the position of light, the amount of light, the color of light. Good lighting can make any camera look really good and expensive, you know? But if you have poor lighting, then you might see the limitations of that camera come through. The next point, color grade, is what I think takes the shot to that next level. I love this aspect of film because it's highly underrated. Most people don't consciously think about it. Most people outside of film nerds like ourselves don't even know that it's a thing. When a filmmaker captures a shot, it's in log, which is a flat profile. So when the editor or colorist gets that footage, it's like gray, that flat profile. Log is a gamma curve that gives a wide dynamic and tonal range. So basically the image captures the most color data it can, giving the colorist the flexibility to manipulate the color to the fullest. Next, I have composition. This is the setup, the placement, the design of what the camera is actually capturing. I feel like this is what most people think of when they think of a cinematic shot. In my opinion, a dynamic shot is a cinematic shot. Think of levels, like you have the foreground, the subject, the background. This gives scale and direction of focus. You also have leading lines, the rule of thirds, symmetry, depth of field, the 180 rule, just to name a few, that all make up composition. And manipulating the composition can add to the story. And then lastly, the story. Do all of these elements above add or distract from the main story? And if they add to it, then that's what makes a cinematic shot.
It's beautifully described.
Thank
That was a cinematic description.
Wow. The full circle moment right here.
My turn?
Yep.
All right. So like you, I have the Google definition of cinematic just as a basis. Follow that up with kind of the origin of the word, because I was wanting to make sure basically that I don't look stupid describing something as cinematic that a larger audience wouldn't call cinematic. So I was trying to like find a definition, but to me, it's more so of a feeling. And we'll have that back and forth here between, I think you have a little bit more of a mathematical approach, which I definitely appreciate coming from like a videographer, photographer. And I think I fall more towards the end of the scale of like a viewer. And I mean, we're both content creators, but I think my approach to it is more of like a cinematic shot as a feeling. So starting off with that basis of the word, it's derived from the French cinématique, meaning simply related to a movie. So I think Harry Styles, again, put it best when he said...
2 podcasts in a row.
When he said, it feels like a movie. But yeah, cinematic is that feeling that you're watching a movie, and there's a few things that I associate strongly with. So it's something that to me is big in scope, big in nature, highly relevant, but feels closely personal. So it's maybe something where the world's at stake, but there's close personal relationships involved. So there's that contrast. And to be clear, I have 3 kind of fluid criteria here for what makes it feel cinematic to me, because it can have only one of these to me and still be cinematic. But the other one is kind of a universal feeling of some kind, that, maybe the movie incites a feeling of fear or dread, or maybe it's happiness or sadness, but it's something that everyone can relate to that makes it cinematic, because it feels cinematic. Feeling cinematic has to do with how a large audience interprets it to me, not just me. And then it has to me, a big part of it is being fitting for the big screen. If it's improved by being on a big screen, if it's improved by a theatrical experience, then it's a more cinematic. So those are the defining factors for me. I feel like the simple things that people look at as like markers for cinematic are basically like focus pulls, dolly zooms, dark lighting, rain, fog,
slow motion does not equal cinematic every single time.
It's like a square and a rectangle. It can be slow motion and cinematic, but being slow motion doesn't make it cinematic.
Right. And I feel like that's something like on the content creator side, like that's big on YouTube, from like vloggers and other content creators, like they'll do a cinematic B-roll sequence and it's just all in 120 frames per second. It's all real slow. And then like, there you go. You add a little song and you got this cinematic sequence. But I think there's more that goes into it.
Yeah, cinematic is about the feeling you experience when you watch it. And
it doesn't mean that stuff doesn't look cool.
It's like you said, it's also like about what it adds to the story. So it can be people sitting at a dinner table, or it can be like a slow motion, action
It can even just be a static shot where the shot itself isn't moving, but kind of like what you were touching on is that it's done with intention to draw a certain emotional response from the scene. Like Roger Deakins was talking about that a lot when I was doing research for Blade Runner 2049, of how like they were holding shots a lot longer because they wanted to create unease and discomfort. And you feel that throughout the whole movie.
Uncertainty adds to unease, and an element of that is like, when is this shot gonna cut away? Like, how long am I gonna? And I definitely think that movie does a good job of creating it. We could probably take 100 examples of a cinematic shot from that movie for this list.
Yeah, that was on our last episode. That was a good episode. Definitely a cinematic movie.
So do you want to start cutting into some of these examples?
Yeah, sure. So First, I want to talk about like how your approach was different than mine.
Okay.
First, so it's interesting how you're right. Like I went more of that, like the technical way of like how to physically set up a cinematic shot, and you went from an emotional standpoint, like you said, like from the viewer. What was your last point? Because I like the way that you worded it.
Fitting for the big screen.
Yeah,
that's enhanced by the theatrical experience.
Yeah, that's a really cool like checkpoint that like I didn't even necessarily think of. But yeah, like when you're looking at it in the big screen, you have the speakers, but also like you're encapsulated in the story without any distractions.
Yeah, when I thought of that, I felt like I finally put my finger on maybe the simplest way for me to say it is like when I'm sitting in the theater, that is a completely different experience than watching it at home. That is like a highly cinematic scene. Yeah. Something I want to go back and watch in theaters.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I we each kind of picked a few scenes from different movies, shows, animations, video games that we kind of want to watch and see what kind of conversation it sparks as we're watching it. Maybe some of the scenes we'll break down the shot of what we really liked about it. Maybe we'll talk about how it added to the story or the lighting or different aspects that went into these shots. But I don't have like anything specific in mind behind these shots, but other than like, this is what cinematic is to me.
Yeah,
you know,
just that you felt it when you watched it. You felt that pull.
So I guess I'll pull up the first link that I have here.
What am I about to see?
If I'm missing my mouse. All right, pulling it up onto the screen here. We have the Batman Mayor dead body scene. So this is our first time seeing Robert Pattinson as Batman walk through and trying to figure something out. And the spot that I want to talk about specifically is going to come a little bit later. I have this one marked off as like, this is my storytelling example that I think the way they shot this scene added to the story. And I think you could probably guess the shot that it's going to be. But even still, this is a good example of lighting. I know a lot of people are like, the Batman is too dark. Like you can't even see what's happening. But I would argue that you see exactly what they want you to see.
Like right here. So the flashlight, that's the thing I want to touch on for being cinematic too. A cinematic shot draws your eye line to the point of focus.
Exactly.
They control what they're trying to show you.
And they do that with light throughout this whole movie. And it's so fascinating.
This whole scene is in a dark room where everyone has flashlights. The literal beam of light is drawing your eye to the destination like a literal spotlight.
Yes.
Like right now, they're shining it on... They're from left to right on the word, the same way you would read a word. Like,
yes.
It's brilliant the way that they decided to shoot this with flashlights. Look how dimly lit those lamps are in the background.
Yes, definitely. So this was the shot right here.
This is what I thought.
That adds to the story, right? Because right now he's standing over the spot that the murder weapon was laying. And they had that same angle, same shot with the murder weapon there after the Riddler killed the mayor. And now we go back and we see that same shot with him looking down, basically telling us like he knows that something was there, and that something was there was the murder weapon, you know. But no one told us that he knows that. They showed us that.
The nature
and to
of
me,
how much
that's what makes it cinematic.
It's like the nature of how much they displayed without saying any words is really incredible.
Yeah, show me, don't tell me everything.
They show us in a lot of ways in this scene that he's the smartest person in the room.
Yes.
And he's not saying, oh, like he doesn't like get up on a board and draw an equation or say, look how smart I am. Like he's literally basically whispering when he talks. And
he's just kind of figuring it out himself. And just so happens that Gordon kind of heard what he said and asked him to repeat himself, you know?
And it's shot too in a way as though he's a background character, like fluttering through the background, you know? Like he's like a shadow or a demon. Like it
definitely unwanted. No one wants him there other than Gordon for sure. The
thing is, Batman himself, his nature, his costume, it draws your eye to him enough where you don't have to put him in the center of the frame.
Yeah, like look at that. Oh, this was the example that I had for storytelling. We could watch this whole movie and talk about the movie as we watch it, you know, like
nonstop.
I love this movie. This is probably my favorite movie right now. And a big part of that is because of the cinematography and how deep they go into their style. You know, they said, look, we're going to have this be an imperfect frame. We're going to have there be dust and fractional breakage towards the edges of the shot, you know, and like the background's going to be extra blurry, you know, the shallow depth of field. And they stuck to it, you know. They're like, look, like we want it dark, so it's going to be dark, you know. And I love when movies like fully commit to a style.
Yeah, then this is one of the best representations of style choice in a movie.
Definitely,
this is the Batman.
All right, Andrew.
I definitely had a scene from this movie picked out, but obviously, but in the name of not doing those scenes back to back, I will make my first choice be the Jurassic Park reveal.
Ooh.
So I want to see Jurassic Park the first time that they see the
Are you
dinosaurs.
still Jurassic? There we go.
Dinosaur reveal, I think, should give us the result we're looking for. We're done. There's a couple scenes that you could go through in Jurassic Park. I mean, I would choose from the first movie. It's by far the best. I kind of debated against almost picking the scene with the T-Rex in the rain because it's so stunning. But I think the big part of what makes this scene cinematic to me and what makes it a theatrical experience is I think it's the best scene, in my opinion, in the history of cinema for capturing a feeling of wonder. And the way that they do that is really spectacular. It's like through these close shots that just show the head and neck of characters to get a lot of the emotion. And what you get for about the first minute of the scene is
like,
the character's reaction.
What are they looking at?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And look at that.
You're not getting right away the awe-inspiring wonder of that long-necked dinosaur.
Right.
You're getting their reaction to it, which builds your anticipation.
Yeah, what a great shot. And it looks so good even today.
Yeah. I mean, look how it captures nature. Look how it captures light. I mean, it's not necessarily to the standard of today's special effects, but it was definitely groundbreaking at the time, and it still holds up really beautifully. Like this modern daylight shot. I mean, the T-Rex scene arguably looks better because it's night and it's raining and it's easier to hide
Yeah,
special
this
effects.
scene definitely has things working against it in terms of making the CGI hold up. But even that, that looks really good. You know?
Look at how, and one thing too that I talked about in my points of cinematic is scale and a very large nature event feeling very personal. And the plot of this movie makes this feel personal because we know how much Alan Grant cares about dinosaurs. Watching him buckle to his knees and have tears in his eyes because of his love of dinosaurs and getting to see him in real life. That is what makes this, I feel so cinematic, because they could just be wow, look, dinosaurs, but it's an emotional experience.
It's also such an iconic shot, and I think maybe that could go into making something cinematic is how long is it remembered by the audience?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And there's got to be no scene better than this one to represent that aspect of cinematic, of being cinematic.
This will be one of the scenes definitely that continue to stand the test of time. This is the shot that I was waiting for too, is the big opening reveal in the sprawling landscape. I think a big part of a cinematic shot is making use of the entire screen. Look at this. Every inch of it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You got Brachiosauruses climbing out of a lake. What are those, pterodons or something? I'm not sure. But more importantly, you've got a tear in Alan Grant's eye. They're making use of the full frame. They're capturing the movie's essence, which is nature and the environment. Look at all the green, the rolling hills, the trees, the lake. It's capturing beauty and life and wonder, and using the entire screen to do that, using broad daylight, using bright light to capture the positive nature of the scene.
Yeah, that's a great scene, and it's not one that I had as one of my examples, which is nice. I don't want all of our examples to be the exact same, and that's why that's what I was hoping to get from this, was to see what scenes are cinematic to you, because I would agree that was very cinematic. That was definitely a level above.
Yeah.
All right. My turn?
Yeah, to be clear, while you look this up, Aaron and I aren't saying that this isn't a ranking list. This isn't the top 10 most cinematic scenes of all time. These are just some of the things that we happen to think of first in this moment.
Definitely.
So, I mean, we could maybe try and do a ranking on that at a later date, but it was so hard for me to try and narrow down to a couple scenes just to pick.
When I first pitched this idea to you for this topic, I was thinking of a bunch, and I was like, okay, yeah, I definitely want to have these examples. And then when I actually sat down and did research and stuff, I was like, I have no idea what I want to pick. No idea at all. There's so many options that represent these different categories.
I still feel like that to this second.
It was tough. What did you say?
I said I still feel like that to this second.
Oh yeah, for sure. This next one, this next one is probably not a scene that jumps right to everyone's mind when you say the word cinematic. hey, Andrew, find me a cinematic scene. Like, it'd probably take you a long time to actually come across this one as an example, you know? But when we watch it, I think we'll both agree that, like, yeah, it is very cinematic. And it's from a movie that maybe you're not going there to watch a movie because it's cinematic. You're going because you're invested in the world itself. And that is sorry, I'm pulling it up right now, movie Rogue One.
I have this on my list also.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it wouldn't take you that long to pull it up as cinematic. So I have this, it's like a compilation here of just different shots from the movie. So no one scene in particular, but I wanted to pull this up because it's definitely the most cinematic Star Wars by far.
I think so
in
as
my
well.
opinion.
I had specifically the scene with the destruction of the planet on my list.
Yeah, like look at that. Right now we're looking at the camera kind of zooming across the landscape with the one singular ship flying through. Like, they did an excellent job of lighting, composition, and then the reason I brought this example up was specifically for the color grading. I love the color palette that they have in this movie, especially when they're on the end battle where they're kind of fighting on the beach. You know, like, the colors are so vivid, the greens and the oranges. Like, I don't know why this movie has always popped out as like, wow, like, the color looks fantastic to me.
It's a big difference in the nature too of watching scenes that are with the Empire versus with the Rebellion.
Yeah.
Because you have a totally different feeling, a totally different aesthetic. Definitely lends to like the separation of like two worlds apart between the heroes and villains.
But doesn't this feel like it's a few steps above all the other films, like visually? You know, like,
I think the
maybe not like special effects wise, but even those too, but like just how they created the shots.
The original three have like a special feeling to them because you feel the time period when you watch it. Like this,
they're nostalgic.
Yeah, the nature of the practical work that they did, the miniatures and everything. It's similar to when you watch the first Blade Runner, but
like all the colors of the trees and stuff, like, it's fantastic. And like you said, like, contrasting the scenes, there's definitely a lot of variety in this.
They fit so many different environments in the Rogue One.
Yeah. And like, it's not just like all sand, you know, or all snow.
But
like,
isn't that not a beautiful shot in A New Hope when Luke goes to stand up on the hill and you see the two suns, the different colors? Like,
yeah,
God, that's
not
gorgeous.
Saying that
too.
it's not.
Yeah.
Just saying that this had a lot of variety that we really got to see the cinematographer's flex, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, it just all, like, look, like this one right here, we got the foreground, the background, the subject, looking at the ship there as the two other ships fly through to go to that ship. Like,
and the action draws your focus. They pull you from the right of the screen around to the left.
It's
back
very
up to
subtle,
the ship
yeah.
with the movement of the smaller ships.
Definitely. So yeah, this was my example of color grade for the movie. And it's interesting that you also have scenes from the same movie.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
So what is the next scene that we're going to look at from your list? Like, look, just his lightsaber coming out when it's Darth Vader and it was just all dark. Like,
that's
what an
amazing
shot.
Yeah. My next scene, I'm going to go with 300, the cliff scene. Now, have you seen 300?
I've started it, but I've never finished it.
We should get the results we're looking for here. To the cliffs.
This one?
Yeah. So, I mean, 300's an all-over beautiful cinematic movie. It's like, it's a Zack Snyder movie, you know. It's got some of the tropes that we talked about, you know. It's got that heavy, would it be saturation?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the color palette of the movie is like, the movie's very grainy. It's very
desaturated. You know, like the colors removed.
It's like in between black and white. And
the darks are like the blacks are like crushed. You know, like they're very black.
That red is
dark.
not. Yeah, that red doesn't have a lot of brightness to it.
Yeah, so desaturation, a lot of like haze from the sand and stuff. It, like,
this shot in particular. So it's the scene where it pans from the side and you can see them backlit by a sunset, and it's just kind of. It's almost just a silhouette. It's the way that they're backlit, and they're just pushing all of the Persians, I believe it is, off of the cliff. It's such a beautiful cinematic shot. I mean, this movie is littered with slow motion, but I think it uses it well. I mean, you can say it uses it too much, but it just, like, look how good at, like, the moments of this movie look. And then the sun being blotted out.
Okay, our camera's cut off. We got too involved in the scenes that we were looking at, but we paused the frame right on the wide shot of the cliff where a bunch of the people are falling off the cliff as the soldiers are closing in on them, pushing them off the edge. And this was the specific shot that you had in mind, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, just look at how they're kind of backlit by the sun. So it's lighting their smart side or the far side from the camera, and their dumb side is completely almost opaque. Like, it's almost completely blacked out where you can see some hints of color, but it strongly separates the characters from the background to give you the feeling of, like, an isolated nature to, like, strongly connect you with this moment. And also, this is a big resurgence for them in this moment.
Yeah. Also, how they have on the left, all of their spears are up in the air, and then on the right, they have their shields and their spears forward, so you can, like, clearly see where that line is of each side.
Yeah, it's also drawing the line of action from the right toward the left, toward the cliff.
The
arrows are pointing you.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Or the spears are pointing you, rather, I should say.
Right. Yeah.
What do you? So, I mean, how do you feel looking at this? If you haven't made it to this scene in the movie, what does this invoke for you? Is that anything interesting about the shot?
I definitely like this shot in particular. You know, like, I always like when you mess with lighting, you know, and, like, you have, like, one main source of light that's right behind the subject. Like, those shots are always so cool, you know, like, have that silhouette effect.
Definitely, like, a gritty, dark nature to this movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like this one shot,
like, because I think it's, like, I don't know who I'm rooting for here, just off of the shot.
Rooting for the Spartans on the right.
But I feel, like, fear looking at this.
Oh, like the impending dread of being pushed off a cliff.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. What a good shot.
All right. What do you have coming up next?
And this is an example too of, like, diving into, like, the style, you know, like, picking a style and, like, going into it 100%.
I appreciate Zack Snyder's style. I think people hate on it way too much.
I like that he has the style. I'm not as fond of the style. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I'm more of a Zack Snyder fan than you are, I guess.
Yes. Okay, so I guess kind of sticking with Zack Snyder here, we kind of touched on it before, is, like, the tropes, you know, the slow motion and stuff like that, and how it's, like, could be cinematic and sometimes it's just not. It's kind of distracting. So we've talked about these two scenes a lot in our podcast, and I figured what better time to actually break these down and watch them than on this episode. So I have Zack Snyder's Justice League slow motion of the Flash breaking through the window to go save this lady who's about ready to basically die in this car accident.
I like when movies are shot outside of the full screen ratio. Like, I like this perspective and then the widescreen perspective as well.
I would much prefer the widescreen.
I would prefer the widescreen to this as well, but I just like that
I don't know. I feel like I'm missing something
on the edges.
Yeah, like,
widescreen definitely feels like it's giving you more.
Yeah, like, I feel like I'm missing out of the story with this, and I do like tight shots for sure, but. Yeah. Okay. So we're not looking at how weird he runs. We're just looking at. So that was the coolest part, was when he breaks through the glass, like,
turns to a fluid basically when he touches the glass. It's going so fast.
But now to me, just his timing of everything looks wrong. Like, something looks off to me, you know, as this is all happening. And we're gonna watch the scene from X-Men Days of Future Past right after and kind of go through the differences that we notice. In this, the big difference that I see is that for some reason Flash is also in slow motion.
He's in a faster slow motion than the rest of the scene.
But nothing on him is really acting as if he's moving that fast. Like, look at his clothes right there. His sleeve, it didn't move. Nothing is showing me that he's moving fast. If anything, it's showing me that everything else around him is moving slow.
Well, I guess just for the purposes of being a DC nerd here,
yeah,
you could argue that the reason that's not happening to him is because of the Speed Force, because it's like this ethereal force that is the reason that like bugs and dust don't shatter through his eyeball and into his brain. It's like this energy that protects him. So you could argue that that is why. And like the environment around him, like the ground is getting destroyed because the Speed Force protects him. It's like why his feet don't shatter hitting the ground that fast.
Sure. But okay, so that was the end.
But
it
doesn't add visually to the scene, and
exactly, yeah, we're looking more so at the cinematics of it, right? And I wouldn't say that scene is like overly cinematic. You know, do you see this? Look, my mouse is connected to my iPad, and what is going on here? So we have the TV.
You just use the mouse pad on the laptop.
We have the TV and the iPad hooked up here. Okay.
Oh, it's still on there.
I've lost my mouse. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why it's hooked. Oh my gosh.
This is advanced right here.
Where is my mouse? Okay, go down. All right, I'm through. I made it.
Wait, did it like slide off the screen?
I broke the mold. All right, so now let's watch the clip from Days of Future Past where he's running in slow-mo as well to show his speed.
Yeah, I think that it's not the best way to use slow motion. It's like traditionally what in the Flash scene that we just watched is traditionally what could be like considered cinematic, but it's just like the ingredients of being cinematic. It doesn't come together to like bake the cake.
Right. I feel like the slow motion didn't add to it. You know, like if anything, it distracted me personally. But here, one, you have a very full composition, right? You have everything flying around. You know, you have the water particles and then, of course, all the pots and pans. But here, he looks like he's moving fast. Look at all the wind hitting him. You know, he had to wear the glasses, which, sure, Speed Force protects Barry. Fine, I'm cool with that. But this looks like his steps look like he's actually moving that far.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't look like that with Barry running.
It convinces you more of the world with all these extra elements. His steps are shattering the wall back there. You can see like the thought that goes into this.
Right, and everything's like frozen in time, but you see the bullets are still moving because they're moving super fast, right? They're bullets. But he's just faster. But he's not in slow motion. So it makes it more believable, at least to me, that he's moving faster than everything else.
A big thing that adds to the element of this shot is, like we talked about before, the storytelling. Because in that, like, I know who Iris West is in like a comic book sense, but in the Flash scene, we don't really have a relationship with Iris, you know? She's just, that's not like the first time we're seeing her on screen is when he is going to save her. So I'm not like, oh no, I hope he saves this character who's a stranger in this universe. In this universe with Quicksilver, like, we are deeply familiar with Magneto, Professor X, Wolverine. We've seen
that he just saved all of our characters. Yeah. And those are arguably the most powerful X-Men. And he just saved them as if it was nothing. It was a piece of cake.
Like two of them are, I think, definitely Omega level mutants. So
yes,
and he just had to save them. So it's really, this is a really incredible scene. Like you said, it's filled up with information for you to take in, where you take in something new every time. I just for the first time noticed on the back of his belt that I think there's a spool of duct tape, which in the scene before that, he duct tapes a bunch of people really fast. So like they added that detail in that he didn't like throw away. He had the rest of the duct tape still on his belt. So they really make full use of everything that they can. And while also doing all these other things like masterful special effects and like the funny little character details they put in there that add personality to Quicksilver too.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to your next scene. What do you got for us?
Oh, my next scene? Well, there's only one way to find out. I'm uncertain what scene to pick from this movie.
Okay.
But I'm going to go with the Interstellar tidal wave scene. I know that there's a dozen scenes I could pick from Interstellar. But this is the scene that stood out to me the most watching the movie.
I need to watch this movie again. This one here?
Yeah, I definitely need to watch it again too, because I've only seen it once.
I've only seen it once too. And it was relatively close to after.
Are we
it came
stopping
out.
at 3 each? We're gonna run out of time, and there's a scene I want to use more than this.
No, we can keep going.
Okay.
Our podcast, our rules.
So you can skip ahead a little bit here,
Okay.
to probably like quarter to halfway through maybe. But basically the entrance of the tidal wave is what I'm interested in seeing. I think that this is another big one for scale. That
Am I close to it? I don't.
no, I think you passed it. Go back to like halfway and click on about halfway and see what we see. So at this point, they're on a planet where there's a huge sense of urgency because every hour on this planet is 7 years on Earth. And there's like these ticks that you hear in the scene, which I think every tick represents like a week or something like that on Earth. And it's just, look at the scope. The way that so I know that there's not a lot of different elements in the shot when they're showing the tidal wave, but the thing that I think makes it very cinematic is they never take a super wide shot during the scene, and the tidal wave is bigger than the shot, so it just makes it feel like you could never imagine the size and scope of this giant tidal wave that's engulfing them. Because look at the spot where
just
it pans up.
large.
There's no
Yeah.
edge to it. There's no you like really
You don't even see the top.
Yeah. So it's just, this scene feels like, oh my gosh, look, it just goes on into the sunset down there. That brief moment you can see the crest of the top of the wave. It definitely has the feeling of being larger than life, and I think this is like a theatrical cinematic experience, the scene.
Definitely. This was a good pick, for sure.
I like the way this movie is colored as well.
Yes, me too. Yeah, I definitely want to rewatch this movie. We should do an episode on it. What do you think?
Oh, Interstellar, certainly. I'll do every Nolan movie. I'll do Tenet.
We should do we should pick a month and do like a Nolan month.
Oh yeah, just cover every Nolan movie.
Yeah, that'd be cool,
2
right?
episodes a week. I'd love that.
Yeah, I'd be down for it.
I could pick a scene off the dome for Tenet right now to add into the cinematic debate. Tenet is a beautifully shot movie. Even if
Here,
it's
I'm gonna
not-
one up you and go with Inception.
God, this scene's so good.
So I brought up the scene where they're asleep in the van, and I brought this scene up specifically for like the storytelling aspect of it, right? There's multiple layers going on right now. And this is also a good use of slow motion, because they're not just using slow motion just because it looks cool. They're using slow motion because time is traveling different.
Honestly, slow motion is being used on like the not quote unquote cool part of the story. It's being used on like the car falling through the air, which is cinematically exciting, but you know, our hearts as the audience and excitement is with this hallway fight scene.
Right.
So like they're definitely using it more as a storytelling element.
Yeah, they're using the slow motion because when you're dreaming, things are happening a lot faster. So when he's falling through the sky, like the whole fight is taking place. And then just the like messiness of the shot, you know, like you got the rain, the urgency of the motorcycles chasing the van. And then of course you have the practical hallway rotating.
They made a giant centrifuge basically.
Yeah.
Of a real hallway that they rotated.
Yeah, and like that I think adds to the cinematic experience, you know, and that kind of falls under like the set design and composition of things. Like this example pretty much hits everything on my checklist, you know, like maybe other than like unique lighting, you know, but they're also in like a hallway of a hotel. Like how good is that lighting anyways, you know, like, but like this looks good still. But yeah, and then just the color grade between the two scenes, you know, it really shows that you're in two different environments. Yeah,
It's super dynamic. I mean, it keeps like they managed to draw your eyes all the way around the screen without it feeling chaotic or without it feeling disorienting, because now my eyes are at the top of the screen as the hallway rotates over and they're fighting on the ceiling, and then the truck's going to roll and my eyes are going to be drawn to the bottom right corner of the screen as they slide down into this room. It's really incredible. And the editing too, they're cutting back and forth.
And they also, of the fight, they have very minimal amount of cuts. You know, it's not a one take. Like right there, they had a few,
Yeah.
close up shots of like the gun sliding and stuff. But for the most part, you get to see the whole fight from one angle, which I feel like always adds to the fight, because you get to see what's happening, boom, right there. I would have liked to see some blood smear on the carpet, but either way, still really cool. So that's back-to-back Nolan shots.
Let's go back to back to back.
Oh, snap. What do we got?
Look at my next shot, which is it's also from Interstellar, the city folding. Or no, I'm sorry, also from Inception, city folding.
Yeah.
They should do an in trilogy. Interstellar, Inception, and then they should do a third one.
What was the scene?
City folding. Yeah, city bending. This is like, honestly, might be like a marquee shot for cinematic movie scenes.
I gotta fast forward this to get to where we want to. Even just like the mirrors here, really cool.
I love shots with mirrors. I think everyone does.
Is this not the? Where do they bend the city? Did I miss it?
Not too sure. But wait,
let me go back. I think I saw a shorter clip of this.
But that definitely had to have been in that first video.
I know. I just didn't know where.
Click around a little bit for me.
This one's a shorter video, so we should.
The premise of the scene that we're looking at
coming up
is that Hobbs and what's her name? It's like
I don't remember names. Come on.
And it's
I barely know your name.
It's like Calliope or something. They all have interesting names. But
all right, so that's the shot right there, right?
The city's folding over in half on itself in this like mind-bending angle, which definitely inspired Doctor Strange.
Oh,
another incredibly cinematic shot.
Definitely. Look at that. And you got the shadows of the city coming onto the city.
It darkens because the part that's folding over is blocking out the light.
Yeah, and then the sun comes back through. Yeah, definitely very creative.
I mean, again, they're making use of the entire screen. They're filling it up with details for your mind to soak in, and like it's something that the shot that definitely sticks with me.
Yeah,
it's big in scope. It's huge, like just like the tidal wave. It feels larger than life, and it's enhanced by sitting and watching it in a theater.
I was just gonna say that point for sure. Okay, I'm going to jump to a show that I think is a masterclass in lighting and color grading. And that is Stranger Things.
I knew we were going to have some similar stuff.
So I just pulled up a clip that has a bunch of different shots all compiled together of Stranger Things. But yeah, the lighting in this show is amazing.
Look at that. Dynamic, colorful.
Like they always have like two tones going on, like either commercial, either like a heavy like teal and orange, or like a purple and blue. Like they're always very dramatic with the lights, and I love it.
So the specific scene I wrote down from Stranger Things was that arcing overhead shot where they're riding the bicycles in season 4. Are you caught up to season 4?
I'm like halfway through season 4 because my wife is the slowest person ever at watching shows.
There's a shot where they loop around from the 4 characters riding bikes in the real world versus in the Upside Down, and it's such a beautiful reflection. The colors they use to light the Upside Down are just so beautiful. This like orange lightning.
What scene?
I'm not even sure what to call it, but it would be like Stranger Things season 4. I call it like the arcing bike shot, but Upside Down bike riding.
Let's see if bike scene pulls it up.
Is it iconic enough for bike scene? Here, probably that one. It should be probably that one.
This one?
Yeah. But it adds to the story. It shows the parallels between between the two and like completely opposite situations. You know, they're both trying to connect with each other from completely different worlds, and it shows like the parallel between them. And it has like this camera motion that is really truly incredible, mixed with it. Okay, this should be it. So it's going to I don't even know how they achieve this. So watch. And it arcs over the top of their head to become, now it literally and figuratively becomes the Upside Down.
What? Can we watch that again? What just happened?
So it's pretty clear how they achieved it when you rewatch it. I mean, they went into the ground to make the
but how did they get this part right here?
I don't know.
Probably a drone, and the camera like flipped.
But it has a crane feeling. Like the drone shots in the Gray Man have a feeling like the camera's light.
Yeah,
but it has a feeling like it's heavy.
But it goes over top of them and then in front of them. Like you can see the crane. You know,
I'm just saying somehow they accomplished the crane feeling.
Yeah. I think what it was is a drone on a gyroscope, right? And it's looking forward, and then it like just looks all the way back, and then just flies into the ground.
I did not like the feeling of the drone shots in the Gray Man because the camera felt so.
Yeah, those were FPV drone shots, so that's like a first-person point of view where they're like. Those drones are much faster. That was definitely like your traditional drone that you would see.
But isn't that like one of the most cinematic things you've ever seen on the small screen? Like in a TV show? That's insane.
This movie in general is like one of the most cinematic shows. I mean, like, so Amazon had Paper Girls, right? Which was like their version of Stranger Things. And you watched the whole thing. I watched most of it. I think I still had a few episodes left.
I like Paper Girls. They canceled already.
I like it too, but I just didn't get around to finishing it. But when I was watching it with like the sense of like, oh, this is their version of Stranger Things. And I was like, man, the lighting and color just doesn't compete. You know, like they're on two different levels, two different worlds.
If you look at Paper Girls in the comic book format, their use of colors is absolutely stunning. Yeah. It's definitely like harkens back to the time period, the show, like it's harkening back to the 80s, to these bright colors, and it's really beautiful on the page.
All right. Do you have another one for us?
Oh, of course. I've got plenty. All right. So I want to look at Robin's death in The Boys. So this is season 1, episode 1 of The Boys. I think that The Boys, despite the fact that I still love it, has not topped itself since season 1. I think it would be a completely S-tier TV show if it matched the quality of season 1 for 2 and 3. I don't think it's necessarily as good, but I still think it's an incredible show. This shot, to me, was the moment where I fell in love with the show. And it's kind of dark because it's Robin's death.
Your discretion is advised.
This is where I knew that this was a different kind of show. Like I was like, this is not your traditional show. They're going to show things and do things that most shows don't have, you know, the gall to show.
Yeah, definitely. So right now they're talking. We have Huey on the sidewalk and Robin's on the street.
A step off the curb.
Yeah, just barely in the street.
She was one step off the curb.
Yeah. And A-Train is about, yep, there he goes. Just chewing through.
We got we've got slow motion again.
Yep. But like it displays like what's happening really well. You know, like I think this is a good use of slow motion because they showed the swipe go through. They showed that something extremely fast just happened, and now they're going back and slowing it down so you can understand and comprehend like what just happened.
And then they're going to speed it back up too here.
Boom.
You can see in that moment like it's a crazy shot.
Like he has no idea like what just happened.
And then watch him interpret it. Because this is, I think,
like where he's still processing. He's like, what?
He's saying Robin. And he's just holding her hands. That's all that's left of Robin. That panning down shot, too, is just... It's like kind of the realization moment for us as an audience, too.
Yeah. Also, something that they talked about... You keep activating my Siri on my computer here. But something else they talked about, like the creators of the show is like the saturation of the blood. Like they wanted something that's really dark, you know, and like it doesn't actually look like that. Like blood isn't that dark, you know, but it's just like the stylistic choice that they chose. Which
brighter blood definitely
really
looks
cool.
more cartoony, I would say. So
yeah,
I
definitely.
think that captures the grit and
fits
nature of
the
the show.
tone of the show, definitely. Okay, let's see what else we got here.
That shot, I mean, talk about drawing your eye line. Like you follow basic like blood outlines of Robin down the line of the shot until you get to A-Train just standing there confusedly.
How could we have any scene breakdown show without watching the Daredevil hallway scene?
So there's something right here in the center. He's just entered the hallway. There's something called the rule of thirds, right? Where our eyes, you cut the screen into thirds in a grid, and our eyes are drawn to those four corners that are created. But when you take a character and put them in the center of the frame, despite the fact that our eyes might be drawn to those corners, putting them in the center of the frame gives them a feeling of authority.
Like right now, he's on the third.
But before that, when he entered the hallway, they were going for that authority. For that. Because he's walking in here with a vengeance. And this scene's also about what they don't show. There's a lot of sound design in here for what you talked about. I do think sound design should be an effective part of what makes something cinematic, even if it's primarily focused to the visuals.
Yeah.
This scene is just using Foley work, thuds and bangs to illustrate all the action that's going on off camera.
So the main reason that I wrote this down for the example that I was trying to show was camera movement. And this is kind of like, it's the one take, you know, it's the moving the camera within the scene. Like we just crossed over his body. The camera got so close to the characters. It makes it feel like you're in that hallway with them and you're trying to like avoid getting hit yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
It feels, and like, this has a very like emotional, deep backstory to it with Daredevil coming in here to save a kid from being sold, you know, into human trafficking.
And there's no cuts that are distracting from anything. But there's
still
still
the whole time.
There's still like good pacing. You know, like they get hit. Daredevil especially gets hit, but then he like takes time to like he leans up against the wall, you know, because he's like in pain, he's tired, you know. Then
the hallway is small and it feels close, and then like you said, the camera being right up against them makes you feel like you're in there close with them too. That's a big part of a cinematic experience, is the feeling of being there with them. I'm not looking away to check my phone during the Daredevil fight scene. I'm in the hallway. Definitely.
Yeah, you're like ducking and swerving yourself, you know, trying not to get hit, you know, you're putting in the moves that you've learned from Creed 3, you know, and just kind of blocking up, putting your forearms out, you know, like you're in this scene with him, you're experiencing what he's experiencing. And then of course the fight choreography is like second to none, you know, like, and it just makes my heart sad that we're probably not going to see this level in the Born Again series.
We shouldn't even talk about it.
Yeah.
But you feel all these hits. Like the thuds, the hits, like you
definitely
feel them.
All right, Andrew, what is your next example that we're going to look at?
So I want to move into animation. We've done movies, we've done TV shows, but let's look at animation. And I think that Japanese anime is a great on-the-nose example of what is cinematic. Like it's real. When you watch it on a big screen, it feels incredible. The colors are so deep and so rich. And to me, the thing that makes anime cinematic is the drama. Everything in anime is to the 10th degree. It's, you know, it's crying, it's screaming. So I want you to watch this scene. This is Levi versus the Beast Titan in Attack on Titan. Tell me what you might pick up on that you think makes this cinematic, because I don't know if you've seen this before.
I have not seen this before.
And I'm gonna touch on things that I think make it cinematic too as we go along.
Yeah.
So we just saw Levi appear out of a burst of green smoke. And they showed a flashback where Zeke is saying, I need to be worried about one human. And they said, yes, Captain Levi is dangerous. So this is basically a human, a short human at that. I mean, he's probably like 5'3", taking on a giant beast titan. This titan's unlike anything they've seen before. It's stronger than usual.
Is he flying?
No, so this is ODM gear. It's omnidirectional device.
Gotcha.
It uses like gas and
they just showed it right there. Yeah.
so the weakness of a Titan, to explain here, is the nape of their neck. So he's going after the neck, which he's trying to get a hold of him.
Brutal.
Yeah, so everything that we just witnessed there, I mean, the opening in this fight has all these green flares that they're using to, it's multi-purpose. It's hiding the direction of movement for Levi as he kills the other Titans along the way and approaches Zeke. But also, when you look at a wide shot, these green plumes of smoke are all guiding our eye line down as the flares are shot towards the end of this pitch that they're running down, which is leading us to our villain, the Beast Titan. He's like this huge, imposing, looming figure that takes up the screen, that is like surrounded by other Titans, you know, as if he wasn't menacing enough. And then they subvert that by Levi coming in and just absolutely decimating him. He pops out of this plume of smoke.
That was really cool.
Right? It just surrounded by that smoke. It really accentuates the surprising nature of his appearance in this scene, because the plot of the show doesn't let us know that that's the plan until we see it enacted. Like, you're surprised as the audience, just as Zeke was to see him show up there. And then just like the speed and ferocity of the scene. I mean, he's moving so fast with so much motion blur. Like,
I also love too when like a really sharp blade cuts through something and there's like a delayed cut.
oh yeah, and
You know,
dude,
like,
watch anime.
so
It's
cool.
all it is. Every sword, nothing in anime's ever been cut at the same time the sword swung.
Yeah. But it's just really cool, you know, because it's like
Yeah.
so fast, you know, that like it just, gravity hasn't taken effect on the freshly cut piece of flesh in this example here.
There's all the elements of cinematic in this scene. It's it's the storytelling element of this small character, Levi, small in stature, taking on this huge imposing villain with a lot of authority and like a Thanos-like presence, and just like the speed, ferocity of the scene is encapsulates you, and it wraps you up in following the action. Like, you're chasing to follow him around because it's so exciting.
All right, so this next one, I want to play the volume for it too. This is the cinematic trailer for Ghost of Tsushima, and it just looks so cool. And then I also have an example of like the gameplay that we can watch afterwards. So this is like our video game example.
So you need me to be quiet for the audio?
No, I'm just going to turn the volume up on this one. All the volume's been down. But yeah, watch this.
You are a samurai, bound to uphold the code. To live, fight.
Just the tension that they have, like right before a fight, even in the game. The quick, swift, intentional.
If you stray from
Look at that transition. Look at that.
what will you become?
It is epic.
A storm is coming.
Look at the balance in the frame there.
Yeah,
The character
and
on
it
the
was
one
like
side
a
and the
Dutch
building on the
angle
other.
to show like how it's a little bit uneased, which Dutch angle is just where it's like turned sideways. Look at that. Let's go.
And that changes too. I mean, balancing the frame has to do with the way you fill in the different sides, but the Dutch angle kind of almost like a scale shows weight on the one side that's pulling down, you know?
Yeah.
So like the character imposing his weight over the structure, which that Japanese building is kind of like probably a symbol of feudal Japan in that metaphor. So there's a lot to be taken from that one single shot that's less than 3 seconds.
I love this video game so much, and I think partially because of like, one, the gameplay is really smooth, the fight mechanics are amazing, but it also looks like phenomenal. You know, just the world building that they have. Like, look at this shot right here where he's walking up to the edge, and he's about to see kind of like the land that's in front of him, and this is like where you're going to next, and you can see the destruction of the cities in the distance, you know, and then all of that terrain that you have to cross to get there.
And it's
like,
crazy just the statement made by like the beauty of nature between him and the destruction.
yeah,
It's
the
like you're
beauty of
basically-
nature and the ugliness of humanity.
You have to, and he's gonna choose to fight past the beauty to look for the
Right. But yeah, like just
violence.
the pacing of this video game is cinematic to me. You know, like right here, he's coming up to 3 guys and he's taking his time, he's getting ready to go. You know, a lot of times, like when you like right here, he challenged that guy, you know, and like the wind's blowing, you have the leaves coming in front of the frame, like it's very dynamic. And then just every movement is intentional. Like, I love this game so much, and it's crazy that you've never played it.
I played it with you.
I mean, yeah, but you didn't like finish the story. You know, like you just kind of jumped in and did a fight. You know,
maybe I'll play it next.
You should.
I gotta have something to fill the hole in my heart after I'm done with The Last of Us Part 2.
Like that first one that we showed, the trailer. That's what I'm hoping like the movie looks like. You know, like I'm really excited for this movie.
Yeah, but Japan's a beautiful place. I mean, look at the nature that they filled this world with.
Yeah, it's stunning. And then the costume design too, like you have a lot of flexibility of how you design your character and like what gear and stuff you wear, and it's all so cool, you know. Yeah. So
I have one more animated scene I want to touch on.
Okay.
Aang versus Firelord Ozai.
Oh, yes.
This is about as cinematic as I think animation gets. It's the battlefield, it's the use of colors, it's the diametrically opposing nature of the characters, and it's the tension and build that we've had up to this point. And oh my gosh, dude, this right here. So we're just opening on Firelord Ozai with Sozin's Comet about to unleash a huge amount of firebending, just lay waste to the land.
Yeah,
and this isn't even the fight.
Yeah, and across the seasons too, like we've only seen him like what, 3 times, you know, like in this season here. So like he's been built up as this fierce, unstoppable force. Look at that. Like he's just up in the air and all that fire coming out of his hand, you know, like we hadn't seen a feat of fire like that before this point, you know, like
look at Aang just being lit in the front by the flames, like standing there opposing him. The nature of this is so beautiful. The way that Firelord Ozai is all about like self-gratification, and he does whatever he wants, and he's uncontrolled and he's rageful. And Aang, on the other hand, is pacifist. He's controlled. He's a vegan. He's a vegetarian.
Of each other, yeah.
They're complete opposites. And Aang will deny himself everything in order to give himself and give support to others, whereas the Firelord only cares about himself, even like going as far as to neglect and mistreat his own children.
They do a great job of combining the tight and the wide shots.
He moves toward and away from the camera constantly.
Yes. And then just the creativity of the actual bending, you know, displayed in this fight. You got the fire, the lightning, and then Aang using all 4 elements to try to stop him.
And the background is almost boring to contrast and give focus to the
but it's still
in the fight.
Very detailed, you know, like, but you're right, the colors are just very dull. And
with the frames filled with the colors of Firelord switching from blue lightning to red fire, Aang with the colors of all 4 elements bending, it draws your attention to the elements.
Definitely. And right there, he of course chose not to shoot him back with the lightning. Yeah, this is a great fight scene. We could easily talk a lot about this show, you know.
I want to cut along to the end of the fight and talk about the color composition in that scene right there. So the first instance of energy bending, we have this, oh man, doesn't it look gorgeous? Like the clouds in the background, their eyes and mouth begin emanating the lights of their opposing colors. Aang, blue, the color of good; Firelord, red, the color of villainy and evil. And as those colors begin to overtake and shine out of their entire body, the shot is showing 50-50 that they're fighting for control. The Fire Lord begins to overtake him, and all the information we're getting in this scene is coming from the colors. The characters aren't moving, they're static. Yet the composition of colors in this scene tells us who's winning and when. And as he's just taking the last of the energy out of Aang's blue light erupts in an explosion and completely overtakes the Fire Lord, and he,
in the screen.
Yeah. It overtakes everything and shines the light into the heavens, and boom. I mean, doesn't get much better in the use of color and animation than that.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful to look at on top of everything.
Definitely.
And he stands triumphant with that low angle shot at the end to assert his power, the downward angle on the Fire Lord here to show that his defeated, nature on the ground.
Yeah, the show does a
purposeful,
great job of world building, character development, and then in this example here, just the composition, the camera movement, and placement to show, like you said, who's in charge, who's winning the fight. Like, you can basically freeze frame at any part and you can say who's winning right now.
Yeah. It tells you all the information visually like a cinematic moment should.
Yeah, and then, like you said, we talked about earlier, like, show us, don't tell us everything. And that one part right there that we just watched with the colors, like, taking over the other person, like, that's exactly what we mean by that, Yeah, what a great example. We've gone through all of my list. Do you have anything else that you wanted to?
I have others on my list, but I want to circle back to them next time we talk about cinematic moments. Okay. We could go on, or obviously could go on and on. We go on for days.
Sure. Definitely. I'm
talking about all the film,
more examples.
Film, TV shows, video games, all of that in one episode. Yeah. No chance.
No, I think we covered a good amount of stuff in this episode. I was really excited for this episode. I feel like I had a lot of fun kind of actually defining what I meant when I said, like, something's cinematic as a compliment, as something that's, like, just above just film in general, because there's obviously that broad definition, but when we're talking about, like, oh, that's cinematic, we're typically referencing that there was something special about that shot. And like, what is it? And that's what I wanted to define here, and I think we did just that.
A scene we need to touch on if we ever come back to this is that scene over your right shoulder where Miles Morales is falling through the air and his big impactful moment of character development. Oh my God.
Yeah, man, there's so many. This is why I was having such a hard time, and you said you were too, like, picking examples for us to actually watch. We had a lot of Nolan examples.
Deservedly so. I think he's the modern master, the modern king of cinematic moments in film. I mean, no one else is doing it quite like him on the same scale. I mean, Tenet, if we did the backwards car chase from Tenet, the plane crash, the backwards fight scene,
yeah, there's definitely some other directors that have, like, a great collection of cinematic movies, shots, and scenes. But he
has a collection in every
probably
movie.
Has the most, He
has a collection in every movie of cinematic scenes, and his movies are movies where they are big theater movies. Like, yeah, you can watch them at home and obviously enjoy them, but, like, to watch The Dark Knight on a big screen is just an elevated next level experience.
Yeah. You do have Matt Reeves. He's got the Planet of the Apes movies, and those are very visually pleasing as well. And then, of course, you had the Batman. Yeah. So maybe he's building a good collection as well, but he's also kind of tied up in this Batman world right now. So maybe we won't see as diverse as a collection from him as we see from Nolan, because he definitely, like, is all over in terms of genre and genre.
I think Edgar Wright makes a lot of really cinematic and maybe not, I don't want to say underrated, because I know a lot of people think they're great, but they're just not talked about as much as they should, and he's not talked about in that light as much as I think he should be. Edgar Wright's movies are so cinematic. Scott Pilgrim versus the World is, like, really so cool to just look at. It's like a beautiful piece of art. Mm-hmm. And it really captures video game to screen. That's super dynamic, super creative. I wish Edgar Wright got more of the respect, because Baby Driver is, like, one of my top 25.
We got to do a podcast on there too. Top 25. I like how you expanded it. Normally it's top 10 for like 12 or 15 movies.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, this guy. All right. Any closing thoughts that you have, or are we good to?
I just keep thinking of cinematic moments like the Shazam, the big one in Shazam when he jumps off the rooftop.
That one is so good. That was the main shot they used to market the second movie. Like, could they not have thought of a better shot for the second movie? They're like, oh, this one was so good, we got to reuse
They're
it.
like, we can't beat this, so I guess we'll just pull the footage.
Yeah. Stupid. All right. I think that is a good ending to our show. I'm glad that we did this topic, and maybe, like we talked about in the beginning, we can create this into a series of like what is or what makes.
I would love to, and hopefully everyone's along for that ride too. We thank you if you made it this far. We really, really appreciate everyone who listens. Love you guys so much. We post new episodes every Monday and Thursday, and make sure to follow us to make sure you're updated with the newest content. Click that notification bell and follow our social media pages. We are on everything, so just search us by our name, Backseat Directing.
And that's a wrap.